Douglas County Health Department is extending the air quality advisory now through Wednesday. Concerns come from smoke generated by the agricultural fires in Kansas and Oklahoma. That smoke continues to move north into our state, pushing local air into the moderate category and even unhealthy for sensitive groups. It is important to monitor air quality conditions and help individuals that suffer from heart or lung disease. We also need to look out for older adults and children to avoid prolonged or heavy exertion.
Short-term impacts are going to be primarily focused on, again, bronchoconstriction. So the patients who are going to have wheezing and cough and shortness of breath, asthma-like symptoms, or the same overlapping symptoms that we see in patients who are having a flare-up or exacerbation of their emphysema or their COPD. So that's going to be your most common issue, is just worsened shortness of breath with exertion. If it's really bad, it can even be shortness of breath at rest, coughing, wheezing, and chest discomfort.
He says long-term issues like lung damage would only happen if smoke exposure persisted for longer periods of time.